and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The first phase of a ceasefire in Gaza has gone into effect, brokered under Donald Trump's so-called peace plan for Gaza. But underneath the grand optics and the big headlines, the plan raises some familiar and troubling questions, including the primary one is, will Gaza remain occupied under this plan? So joining me on the show today to help us explore this topic further is Professor Dr. Syed Farid Alatas, who is a Professor of Sociology at the National University of Singapore. He's also a visiting professor at Universiti Malaya. Professor, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. I want to explore the idea of the occupation in Gaza. Maybe you can help me unpack that word. It's such a big, loaded word and used so freely in the press today, but help us understand it.
Yes, it's true, Melissa. The entire media, the media everywhere in the world uses the term occupation, but I think we should try to see things through the point of view of Palestinians. As early as, from the early days of the establishment of Israel, the Palestinians themselves were referring to the establishment of the State of Israel using the term settler colonialism. And by the 60s and 70s, you already had literature, scholarly studies written by Palestinians talking about the nature of settler colonialism, talking about Israel as a settler colonial state. And that was followed by Western scholars as well, who were critical of the establishment of Israel. So I think it's more accurate to refer to this as colonialism. And in fact, it's a little bit more complicated. We can actually see three forms of colonialism existing in Israel-Palestine simultaneously. Wow. So you have, with the establishment of Israel, you have what you call settler colonialism. So the goal of settler colonialism is not to extract resources, not to establish plantation economies, to benefit from to benefit in that way by extracting resources or growing cash crops. That was a kind of colonialism in Malaya, right? Yes. Or Indonesia.
Extractive colonialism.
Yes, extractive or plantation economies, cash crops, rubber, tin, coffee, cocoa, and things like that. But in places like South Africa and Israel, the goal of colonization was to get land, and for the colonizer to move there on a large scale, to move there and to settle there, to leave their home countries forever and to settle in a new land. So that's settler colonialism. Now that settler colonialism, which started in 1948, spread to parts of the West Bank and continues to spread. So the settler colonialism is spreading. It didn't stop in 1948. Now, apart from that, since 2005, the settler colonial state of Israel had ruled Gaza not through settler colonialism, but through what we can call semi-colonialism. Because the Israelis from 2005 were not physically in Gaza, right? But they were controlling Gaza externally. Much like China before the Chinese Revolution was controlled externally by various European powers. And this is a phenomenon known as semi-colonialism, right?
So not in Gaza, but controlling outside of Gaza.
Yeah, controlling import, export.
The ins and out the borders.
That's right, that's right. So internally Gaza, the Palestinians had juridical control. But externally they were controlled. So that's semi-colonialism. So you've got settler colonialism and semi-colonialism. Now in the West Bank, there's a third form. Part of the West Bank is settled illegally by Israeli settlers, right? And once it is settled, it becomes under Israeli law. But there are parts of the West Bank that are still controlled by the Palestinian Authority. But in those parts, Israel actually rules or runs that part of the West Bank through the Palestinian Authority. And this is what you might call indirect rule. Again, we bring the example of Malaya. many states in Malaya were ruled indirectly. It was known as indirect rule through the Malay sultans. And this is what you're having in parts of the West Bank. So basically, you have indirect rule in parts of the West Bank, settler colonialism in Israel proper, as well as other parts of the West Bank, and semi-colonialism in Gaza before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why is it important that we make this distinction, particularly in light of the current ceasefire that's being negotiated, the peace plan that's being negotiated?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think colonialism is a lot worse than occupation. Right? Yeah.
It's embedded.
It's important. Well, see, when you talk about occupation, Israel occupies part of southeastern Syria.
Okay.
The Golan Heights.
Yes.
Southern part of Lebanon. They have a military presence. It's not full-blown control. When you talk about colonialism, it's full-blown control for an extended period of time, for the long term, where the colonizer would build institutions, infrastructure, schools, different departments connected with government. So that's colonialism. It's a lot more intense, more long-term than occupation. So I think that's an important distinction. There are, there is Israeli occupation when we talk about Lebanon and Syria and and so on. But it's different from what is actually happening in Israel-Palestine.
So if we were to talk about the peace plan that's being negotiated now, the summit in Egypt, and what kind of peace it promises, what do you think is being legitimized here under the language of peace?
Well, I think pro-Palestine scholars, activists, and people in general, all over the world, I think it's quite clear, are very skeptical about the plan. They support it in the sense that they support it because it means hopefully an end to the war.
Okay.
But there's no guarantee for that, because a lot of people are wondering whether Israel will continue the attacks after the hostages are released. There doesn't seem to be a guarantee of that. That's one issue. The other issue is that the peace plan doesn't say much about the establishment of a Palestinian state. It doesn't say anything about Palestinian statehood. There are certainly no guarantees about that in the plan. So the worry is that even if the 20 points of the plan are implemented, will we just be back at, pre-October 7th? Except that if the plan is followed, if the plan is executed, Gaza will no longer be a semi-colonial state under Israel. It will be colonized in a different form. Okay. It may involve it may involve settlers. There may be a settlement of Israelis in Gaza, and it will also involve a kind of direct rule. See, prior to October 7th, Gaza was juridically controlled by Hamas, by Palestinians. Now, according to the plan, the 20-point plan, it doesn't seem that Palestinians are going to have complete juridical control over Gaza, because there will be what the plan refers to as a technocratic authority consisting of Palestinians controlling Gaza, but they will be overseen by a board of peace on which President Trump and ex-Prime Minister Tony Blair sit on, right? So this seems like there is foreign control over Gaza.
Let's explore that. I'd like to unpack that. So this proposed temporary administration, this board of peace with Tony Blair as co-chair, given what we know of his legacy in Iraq, what message does that send? What does it tell us about the way the West still sees itself in the Middle East?
Well, I think it demonstrates something that we have known all along, all these decades, that many leaders in the West who speak about democracy, peace, human rights, and they spoke about this and they continue to speak about this, even though they had violated all these values during the process of 500 years of colonization, ever since the Spanish and the Portuguese found America and established their rule there, instituted their own forms of genocide, against the Native Americans. The same was done by the French, the Dutch, the British. Centuries of brutal colonial rule. Then they come up with ideas on human rights, democracy, fraternity, equality, equality, and so on and so forth. The slogans of the French Revolution. But colonialism has continued in another guise. They still control much of the world, especially the world powers, the US, Europe, NATO. There is much interference in the affairs of the former colonized countries. They promote countries and support countries, including authoritarian regimes, totalitarian regimes, military dictatorships, as long as those countries are friendly to the interests,
serve their interests.
Yeah. And they're quite willing, and they've done it, they're quite willing to orchestrate overthrow of democratic regimes if the policies of those regimes are not in line with their own interests. And this is exactly what is happening in Palestine. According to the interests that the US claims it has, or the Europeans claim, the values that they claim they have, democracy, human rights, and so on and so forth, they should be supporting Palestine rather than the apartheid state of Israel. But we don't see that, right? So they are guided by their real interests, but there's a veneer of lofty values. But we cannot evaluate them according to what they claim to promote.
Okay. So look at the actions and not the words.
Yes. Yes. Look at the latent rather than the manifest.
What do you make of having a board of peace? Is it necessary? What does it say about how other states view Palestinian self-determination? Yeah,
I think I would say that it's more than unnecessary.
A board of peace.
Yes, there should not be a board of peace. They should not be overseen by any body. At most, I think there could be an institution established by the UN to help them. Yeah, okay. But not to oversee them.
Is there any other country that has a board of peace overseeing?
No, I'm not aware of that. Yeah? And it seems that this so-called board of peace is really about establishing the commercial interests, the economic interests.
Thank you for bringing that up, because part of that initial plan under Donald Trump envisions a panel of developers to oversee investment proposals. If I may quote them, I quote him, exciting development ideas. And of course, Donald Trump views everything through the lens of real estate development. But I want to talk about maybe economic colonialism. Is this an economic colonialist project in Gaza that we're seeing a shift from military occupation to maybe economic occupation?
Well, the goal of colonialism from 1492, the conquest of America, was economic.
The extractive colonialism that you talked about.
The extractive colonialism, the plantation colonialism, even the semi-colonialism, all forms of colonialism
always
are about economy. And for that, it was necessary to establish political power. The old form of colonialism required direct political control, right? Now, in most of the world where countries have attained political independence, there are still controls. So we speak of coloniality rather than traditional colonialism, but there's still controls. For example, the US can control much of the world economically because of the fact that the whole world uses the US dollar. Because they're such a large economy, they can control the world through the institution of tariffs and so on and so forth. But it seems that in Gaza, they're interested in the offshore oil and gas reserves. So there is that economic dimension. There's also the political dimension, of course, that some feel that among the powers that there should be protracted continuous chaos in the Middle East, so that the outsiders, the Europeans, the Americans, can continue to have a presence and a role. So this is the political,
wow.
the geopolitical side of it.
Keep them distracted
Yeah.
with the chaos. So some people who I've spoken to about this issue of economic investment into Gaza, they say that if the US or other international investors are willing to pour money into Gaza to rebuild or create jobs or give the Gazans a semblance of normalcy, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And they argue that economic engagement internationally might protect Gaza even from further bombings, further violence. How do you see that argument, Professor?
I think in principle, we are all for economic engagement, for investment, even for foreign investment in Gaza. I think that's not the issue. The issue is who controls the whole situation. Will there be uneven or unequal development within Gaza? Will the profits and the benefits go to the foreign companies and maybe to a small elite of Palestinians, or will there be more even development? These are the issues that need to be discussed, and they're not being discussed at all. And there's also the issue of how long this is going to take. This is not something that is going to take a few years, right? They say rebuilding it may take 10 to 15 years before Gaza is habitable. Meanwhile, what's going to happen to the Palestinians? Are they going to be able to live? Will they be pushed out? Will there be pressure by the settler movement in Israel, pressure on the Israeli government to push Gazans out and send them to other countries? If that happens, will they be able to return to Gaza when it is rebuilt? These are very crucial questions.
Okay. You said earlier that really in the plan there is no mention of what will happen to Palestine or to Gaza after the ceasefire, after the hostages are being released. And I know that right now we have the Egypt summit co-chaired by President al-Sisi and Trump, and that's being framed as a turning point. But I'm wondering how you see, so a lot of countries have supported this peace plan.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know why, when there is no definitive answer or no clear endorsement of Palestinian statehood. Why do so many countries support it when, if all we're doing is returning to the status quo?
You see, I think those countries, those leaders who are genuine about peace support it, as do the Palestinians and as does Hamas itself, because it means an end to the war, and it's crucial for that to happen.
Immediate end to violence, right?
Exactly, so that genocide can stop, people can start to pick up their lives. But at the same time, pro-Palestine people, the Palestinians themselves, are not under any illusion that this is a clear path towards statehood. Okay. And the statehood issue is very complicated because in the rhetoric, people support statehood and they support the two-state solution, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the two-state solution itself is not something that Palestinians think is workable. Because, you have, I don't know, I think something like 70%, 60-70% of the West Bank that is settled. There's no contiguous territory that can become a state. It's like what they call Swiss cheese, you have holes, pockets here and there. So how can you make a state out of Swiss cheese West Bank and Gaza, a strip which is separated from the West Bank? Are you going to get rid of 600, 700,000 settlers and send them back? Is it politically possible for Israel to, to recall its settlers and ask them to go back to Israel? I think that's quite impossible. Most Palestinians and even others feel that the only, if a possible solution is achievable, it would be a one-state. A one-state solution with peace, with equality for Jews, Christians and Muslims. Right now you have a one-state, but it is an apartheid colonial state, right? So that needs to be transformed into a democratic one-state.
Professor, how much leverage do Arab states have in actually shaping what comes next for Palestine?
I think Arab states have enormous leverage because they are, they have enormous investments in Europe and in America. They also are major trading partners with the US and with the Europeans. ASEAN has also great leverage as a bloc, right? We are a very important region, not just in terms of economic size and impact, but also because we are strategically located in a region where China is very important. So the Europeans and the Americans consider ASEAN to be of great significance, seeing that China now is competing economy. But these important regions, ASEAN, the Gulf Cooperation Council, are not using the leverage in order to, to influence the US or to even force the hand of the US.
Okay. Well, then what do you make of the fact that Trump is coming here to KL for the ASEAN summit, given that the optics are also that he is the broker, the peace broker, so to speak, of this ceasefire? Do you think that this is a good thing or a bad thing for regional diplomacy?
I think that's a separate matter. Okay. Malaysia is a small state. We can't behave recklessly. We have to have good relations with all sides. And I don't think inviting Trump is a problem. The issue is, do we sacrifice our principles and our values, right? There's no point in in disinviting Trump and then having problems with the U.S. and the U.S. increasing its tariffs, and this is going to affect us in a negative way. So inviting Trump or not, that's not the issue. The issue is, are we resolved as a nation, working with other nations in our region and with the larger Muslim world to actually use our leverage? Whether Trump comes or not is irrelevant. Okay. The issue is, are we going to use our leverage to make changes, good, positive changes happen?
Do you see that? Do you see that we are resolved?
No, we are not using. I don't think ASEAN has, nor the GCC has the actual, political will to use that leverage, because you are going to enter into a confrontation, right? And imagine if Qatar and the Emirates and Saudi Arabia say, if President Trump, if you do not make certain changes, if you do not stop the war, they could have done that a year ago, right, or 18 months ago. If you do not stop the war, tell the Israelis to stop, we're going to pull out, or we're going to withhold our purchases of, arms or whatever it is. They've never really, at least as far as we know, they've never really done that. So yes, I think they're not using their leverage.
Are you concerned, Professor, that the conversation has shifted so dramatically from the genocide and what's happening in Gaza, on the ground Gaza, the famine that's being imposed on them, has shifted so quickly to the language of peace and plans and a post-war plan? I'm wondering what kind of vigilance, solidarity with the Palestinian people requires in this moment.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think if you look at the alternative media, the non-mainstream media, you find that there is still a great deal of concern with people on the ground, right? Because I think we are very cognizant of the fact that there may be years of economic planning and reconstruction, during which time Palestinians are still going to have a miserable life. And we need to, to keep that in mind and work. So the NGOs, hopefully the NGOs, peace activists, NGOs, and others, medical personnel from outside will be allowed to enter and do the kind of work that needs to be done, even as reconstruction is taking place. Yeah.
Professor, thank you so much for being on the show with me and helping me think through some of these really difficult and nuanced headlines. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching.